bring up our next speaker from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and that's Natalie Holmes, who's going to be speaking on workforce. I'm just leaving it broad. Natalie?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Natalie Holmes. I'm with the Community Engagement and Analysis team at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. Our team looks at economic conditions and structural changes affecting lower-income communities and small and micro businesses across the 9 westernmost states. We combine quantitative analysis with roundtables and listening sessions to capture emerging signals that might not show up yet in traditional data sets. So today I'm going to be sharing findings from 2 recent and forthcoming pieces of work that I've been doing. First, an analysis of on-the-job exposure to AI among lower-income workers, and second, some new insights from the 2024 and 2025 Small Business Credit Survey's supplemental survey modules on AI adoption. So given the role that many of you play in shaping economic opportunity here in San Mateo County, understanding how AI is showing up for both workers and small firms in this region felt especially timely. One quick note before we start. These views are mine and don't necessarily reflect those of the Federal Reserve System. All right, so let's start with what we're seeing among lower-income workers. So when I talk about exposure, I mean the likelihood that a specific task or set of tasks could be either replaced or aided by AI. So think getting and processing information, coding is an obvious one, scheduling activities, controlling processes, and administrative tasks. So we identify what tasks generative AI specifically could do. This dates to late 2023, so things have changed a bit. And then we roll that up to the occupation level. So most attention has rightly been on highly compensated, highly educated kind of white-collar roles that really do have the highest levels of exposure given current technology. But those are not the only workers who have meaningful exposure today. So the consequences, whether AI complements or substitutes tasks, might differ across these groups specifically. So again, we start from this data set called ONET. We identify the top quarter of occupations by task level exposure to AI, and then we link that to census data to flag workers who are in the bottom 80% of median household income. All right, so in the Bay Area, over 500,000 workers we identify as being in occupations that are highly exposed to AI, and of those, over 100,000, so about 1 in 5, are in lower income households. That share is pretty similar to what we see nationally, and San Mateo County also looks pretty similar. So we identified about 92,000 highly exposed workers, about 18,000 of which live in lower income households. So when we flip the lens and ask what share of lower income workers are highly exposed, the Bay Area does stand out slightly above both state and national averages. You can see there in the figures. And San Mateo County is right at about the Bay Area average at about 13.5%. So this is California data, but also holds nationally. About half of the lower income workers in high AI exposure jobs are in office and administrative support roles. So think administrative assistants, receptionists, office clerks. And again, by definition, these are roles that have a lot of information processing, scheduling tasks, precisely the things that current AI capabilities are good at doing. So we've talked about occupations, now thinking about industrial mix. These workers span several industries. It's not just a tech sector story, especially when we're thinking about lower income workers. So that's going to reflect both the mix of occupations within industries and then also local industrial structure. Many of you, I'm sure, are seeing this firsthand. So again, just to flag that this is different for lower income workers than highly exposed to AI workers as a whole. The professional services and tech is at the top there with about a quarter of all highly exposed workers, but just under 20% for lower income. And we see higher rates in eds and meds, transportation, warehousing, those kinds of things. One other note is that thinking about lower income workers compared to all highly exposed workers, they're more likely to be self-employed and to work in the nonprofit sector. So some of our real-time qualitative findings. So over the course of 2025, we held 7 roundtables with about 60 participants, including employers, workforce training organizations, service providers, and we heard a few themes, many of which may echo what you all in this room are experiencing, especially for this group, the tension between wanting to leverage new tools and wanting to ensure that workers aren't left behind. So first, adoption varies widely at the organizational level, but where organizations are using AI, we are seeing some early employment impacts, even within these support organizations. Second, Participants are seeing real potential benefits for lower income workers, but emphasize that critical thinking skills, soft skills, these fundamentally human things are key to making AI tools useful. And third, there are concerns that without guardrails and support systems, AI adoption could deepen existing inequities, specifically thinking about generational digital divide and then also urban-rural divide. Okay, switching gears to talk about small business. From the Small Business Credit Survey, so this was fielded between September and November of this past year, we see that almost 60% of small businesses are using or planning to use AI. Employer firms are more likely to be using it, but when we widen our lens to think about the group planning to use AI, it evens out. All right, so we asked how important AI was to the production of firms' core goods and services, not ancillary stuff like your core work. More than 60% of firms say that it's at least somewhat important. And this is one place where we see, even though non-employers and the smallest firms are maybe a little bit behind on the adoption curve, it's more integrated for them, and they're saying at higher rates that it's more important to their core work. So for solo entrepreneurs and micro businesses, which make up a large share of all firms in this country, the ability to effectively leverage these tools could be a meaningful equalizer. And then we see that among the firms that are using AI more deeply, it's having real measurable effects. So stick with me here. The left panel is going to be employer firms. The right is non-employer firms. And we asked a series of questions for like what you attribute to AI. How has your productivity, the quality of your goods and services, and your sales changed? And we see, first of all, everyone thinks AI makes them more productive, unsurprisingly. But that's to a greater extent for non-employers. And then if we look at the firms who say that AI is very important to their work, it's like over 85%. Looking at non-employer firms, so on that right-hand panel, they're more likely to say that AI improved the quality of the goods and services they provide. And then the final point I want to make is that the rightmost palest column, which I hope you can see, is people who aren't sure. So there's a large degree of uncertainty about how the adoption of AI tools is affecting sales and quality of goods and services. So when we compare firms that are already using AI with those that are planning to use AI, there are some interesting differences in the challenges they report. Firms using AI mention accuracy and sort of issues related to integration of these tools, whereas firms planning to use AI are more likely to say that their main challenges are about finding out which tools to use, how to implement them, how to train up employees. My sense is that this "where do we start" challenge may resonate for a lot of small and mid-sized firms here who don't have their own dedicated tech teams. So then finally we asked, among firms not using AI or not planning to use AI, why was that? And the overwhelming top reason was it's not applicable to their businesses. In 2024, we had a text field response, and one of our favorite responses was, "No, we make cheeseburgers." So there's a large degree of firms that just think this isn't applicable. That could be real, but it could also be part of a perception gap, which is something that local business serving organizations might be in a unique position to help bridge. So I'm going to close with just a few key takeaways from these two pieces of research. So half of lower income, highly exposed to AI workers are in office and admin roles. Larger firms are more likely to be using AI already, but for the smallest firms, it's already more integrated into their work, and we're seeing real changes in how they do their work and some measurable performance outcomes. The biggest challenges are around figuring out what tools to use and how to use them effectively. And then support organizations are seeing both promise and risk, especially the possibility that AI adoption could widen divides unless we put structures in place to support vulnerable workers and smaller firms. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from Mary Daly, who's the president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve. "Technological change is inevitable. How it affects the economy and society is not." So as leaders across business, government, and community organizations, many of you are already thinking about how to balance innovation with inclusion. These findings reinforce how important your roles are in ensuring AI adoption strengthens rather than fractures the region's economic landscape. Thank you.